And the sixth individual qualifying is Mr. Rick Thompkins of Arizona. The second thing that we needed to do was to decide who would be our moderator and ask questions. And having looked through the various internet messages concerning the issues going on in the campaign, I asked Jay Manifold of Texas to come forward and ask the questions based upon his formation of the fully informed delegates. Mr. Jay Manifold. Now, before I turn it over to Jay, let me explain the specific format that we also outlined in a very contractarian way with all participants. We'll have a 5-minute opening presentation from each called Why I Should Be the President of the United States. We will follow that by a 3-minute response, my reactions to comments of my opponents. We will then have 3 questions that Jay has constructed, which will be focused on giving you, the delegates, an overview of ideas and strategies and interest in the Libertarian Party by our candidates. We will then submit to the audience pre-write questions, which we will gather, and Jay will read those questions for each candidate to answer. We are going to strictly adhere by these time rules. If anyone goes over the time, the microphone will be cut. We will live by the time minute that we've established. So let me begin by having Jay begin the process. Thank you very much. If you have questions, start writing them out because we will collect them.
All right, thank you all for remaining, and I'd like to express my thanks to the TV audience for tuning in and mention also to them that that was my rear end you saw backing out from under the Texas table this morning. I believe that was shown on C-SPAN. A sort of breech berth. Also, as should be immediately visually obvious to all of you, the real reason I was chosen for this was that my hairstyle resembles Don. Okay, Don has mentioned the format. Don has the stopwatch. Right? So we will begin. A random drawing has already determined the order in which our candidates will speak. We determined the order, and essentially we're going to kind of go flip back and forth, reversing it from time to time. So the 5-minute opening statement, essentially the question being, why should you be President of the United States? The first person to speak will be Irwin Schiff.
Well, of course, my home is now in Las Vegas, Nevada. It used to be in the fair state of Connecticut, but of course now I'm a Westerner. While I should be president, unlike Harry Browne, I'm not concerned with explaining to the American voter why government doesn't work. I'm assumed that any American who's not brain dead knows that already. What I'm concerned is explaining to the American public why most of what the federal government does is either illegal and unconstitutional. For example, the Constitution clearly authorizes the government to borrow money, but nothing in the Constitution allows the government to lend money, which means 80% of what the government does with FHA financing, student loans, making loans through the International Monetary Fund are all unconstitutional and illegal, and the American public should know that. Also, the American public should know that the Constitution requires the federal government only to coin money and making gold and silver a token, a payment in debt. What we now have circulating as money, that the courts have allowed the irredeemable notes of a private bank impressed with the statement, this is legal tender, and the federal government was given no authority in the Constitution to make anything legal tender, and now what we have is circulating in the United States is the repudiated notes of a private bank, and it's that private bank which should be eliminated. The point is this. The American public should be made to understand that all U.S. coin and currency is counterfeit. The American public should also be made to understand that Social Security is nothing but a chain letter that is run out of chain. The American public should know that when Dole and Clinton talk about the trust funds being viable to the year 2022, there are no trust funds. Every penny ever collected by the government for Social Security has already been spent. But when the government collects $100 million in Social Security and spends $80 million in Social Security benefits, they spend the balance. And then they give themselves an IOU for the money they spend, and they say the money we're spending is really an asset because we're giving ourselves IOUs for the money we spent, and that's an asset. Of course, nobody can write themselves an IOU and claim it as an asset, neither can the federal government. Also, the American public should know that the federal government runs the world's biggest fence. IRS agents have no authority to seize property in payment of income taxes. There is no authority in the Internal Revenue Code for IRS agents to seize property. The IRS is purely an administrative agency. Unlike the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, they have no enforcement powers, but they get away with it nevertheless. As a matter of fact, I happen to have, the Internal Revenue Code here, which of course I sell, and there's no provision in the Internal Revenue Code for any American to pay income taxes, nor keep books and records for income tax purposes. And why are Americans paying? Because they're intimidated and coerced by the corruption and criminality of the federal judiciary, who put people in jail for violating laws that do not exist in order to intimidate the American public into paying a tax that no law requires them to pay. I, as well as millions of other Americans now, no longer pay income taxes. And as a matter of fact, Americans have a patriotic duty not to pay income taxes because we have a government that is run wild. Talk about civil seizures. Property is being seized every day by the United States government without charges being brought against anybody. You know why? Because federal judges said property doesn't have any rights. That's a brilliant statement. Whoever claimed that property had rights, only a federal judge could figure out that property has no rights. Of course, the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution said that no American should have property, can be deprived of property without due process of law. And it's an individual's right to property that federal judges have tossed in the ash can. And if the American public knew what was going on, practically every federal judge in this country would be behind bars. And when I say that, I mean it literally. I'm not saying it figuratively. Section 241 of the U.S. Criminal Code makes it a crime for two or more persons to conspire to deprive any American of any right or privilege secured to them by the laws of the United States, the Constitution. Now, if the payment of income tax were mandatory, it'd violate the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment.
I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, our next speaker, again answering the question, why should you be President of the United States, is Charles Collins.
Fellow Americans, fellow libertarians, all ladies and gentlemen and visitors, I'm Charles Collins from the great state of Florida. I have a ranch in Georgia and we continue to work it. You need to know a little bit about me because I want to be President of the United States. I'm not here just to make a statement. I'm here to win the election. I want your nomination by acclamation, and we want to go on and win this thing. Not win 3 or 4% of the vote, but win 40% of the vote, and that's why I'm here. America is at a crossroads. We have to either follow the road of tyranny, which the administration is leading us down, or we have to follow a new leader who will take us to freedom under the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence. And Charles Collins is that candidate for you. We have campaigned all over the United States, not just in one state and not just with the Libertarians, but we love you. We have been asked by the Libertarians in the 5 largest Libertarian states to come here and speak, and that's why I'm here. Rob Thorne in Texas is running in the 8th Congressional District. Rob has been a friend for a long time, and we've supported him, and we continue to do so, and we hope he will be our next Libertarian to be elected to Congress. And Rob Thorne from the 8th District. Remember that and support Rob if you will. The first thing I'm going to do when we get to Washington is fire Janet Reno. You're right. That first day is going to be busy because we're going to get rid of the BATF, the CIA, the EPA, the DEA, and the Food and Drug Administration. I'm going to appoint an Attorney General, and I'm going to tell him, you go to Washington and you support the rights of the American people under the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and if you don't, I'll appoint another one, but we're not going to have another one like Janet Reno oppressing the American people. That's going to be at an end. We're suffering in our country from a moral, a monetary, and a military crisis, if you want to take the 3 M's. Moral, we have a crisis because we have to return one nation under God, one nation under the Constitution, and one nation under the Bill of Rights. And I will work to do that for our people of our country. I will be an example. I will not go up there and desecrate the office of President of the United States. We have a monetary crisis, so therefore I would get rid of the Federal Reserve, buy it back, and take over all of its assets. There is a paper trail, and we have people who are working with the Federal Reserve and who are immediately out of the Federal Reserve. We know where that paper trail goes, and we know how many trillions of dollars they've stolen from you, the American people. We intend to get it back and put it in the U.S. Treasury, and we're going to pay off the national debt so your children and grandchildren don't have to pay the debt that should be mine and yours to pay. We can run our government on the other taxes that are constitutional. We're running it now, right now, without income taxes. They all go to the Federal Reserve as interest. We get rid of the interest, we get rid of income taxes, we get rid of the IRS, when we know that we can stop all of these things under laws that exist today. We don't have to have Congress pass any law. Look up the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, Section 30, and you see how we take it back and we take all of their assets. It's not hard to do. So all of the money we have running our government right now is imposts, duties, excise, and tariffs. We would return to Congress the emergency and war powers that have been granted to the President since 1862 and 1933. We will stop this. Immediately upon going to Washington, we'll issue an executive order that will refute and repeal all the executive orders going back to Mr. Roosevelt and all the way up through Mr. Clinton. We will not have executive orders anymore in our country. The one last executive order I issue, that there will be no more executive orders. We're going to stop the abuse by the federal government or the state government or the locals. There's no such thing as right, even though the Supreme Court says it is. His time is up, and we're going to stop confiscation of the American people's money and forfeiture. Thank you, and God bless you.
All right, our next speaker is Rick Thompkins.
I can answer the original question very quickly. I should be President of the United States for the same reason that any real libertarian should be President of the United States. I could take the oath of office without lying. My friends, my campaign is about message. Last year, a number of people came to me and asked me to run for the Libertarian presidential nomination because they said they wanted a candidate who would communicate to people good reasons to become libertarians. They were unhappy about what they were hearing on the campaign trail. They were shocked at some of the proposals being made. They said to me, "Rick, I know you agree. Libertarians oppose taxes on principle, not just because they're too high." I hope that all of us will come to understand that and take it to heart. A campaign based just on vote for me is not enough. We need to give people good reasons why they should become libertarians. Any run-of-the-mill Republican will tell you that government doesn't work and we ought to cut taxes. And with Bill Buckley at National Review having called for an end to the drug war, we need to be certain that we have differences not just in degree, but in principle between us and those other parties. It's not enough to just say we'll cut taxes and spending and regulations more than Republicans would. Even if that's true, people still would conclude that they'd be better off voting for Republicans because they don't want to waste their vote on someone they think can't win. And what's worse, none of that gives a compelling reason why someone should become a libertarian. Most people become libertarians because of principle, not differences in policy proposals. The same principle that Jefferson referred to in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that's the key. Inalienable rights, the kind that cannot be morally or legitimately infringed by anyone, especially by government. I believe that this is the most important message we can transmit to the American people. It is these self-same rights that are under relentless attack by both Democrat and Republican politicians, and any candidate for our Libertarian nomination must be outspoken in defense of those rights. People ask often how we differ from the Republican Party. You've all heard those questions. My answer is simple. The Libertarian Party stands for inalienable rights for every person. We say government has no legitimate authority to initiate force against any peaceful person, to violate our rights in any way. Inalienable rights are the definition of freedom, and freedom is indivisible. You can't separate it out. It's all one. And if one person's rights can be violated, no one is secure. In 1776, the signers of the Declaration of Independence pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor in the name of inalienable rights. To reestablish those rights, the Libertarian Party struggles every day. Yet today, some among us seem terrified to admit that the Libertarian Party unequivocally advocates these rights because they think it might upset some people. Well, my friends, I hope people do get upset. It's time to get upset with a government that routinely trashes our rights. It's time for purple people to learn. Purple people. I was born and raised in Minnesota. What can I say?
Whatever kind of people they may be.
I'm finished.
bad. There's some purple tape, electrical tape, attached to this thing up here that I think may have been the cause of that. Okay, our next speaker is Harry Browne.
Thank you very, very much for that welcome. This is what Pamela and I have been experiencing all over the country. You've taken us into your arms, into your hearts, all over America. We've campaigned in 38 states, and believe me, we love you. Love you for everything that you have done for us over the past 2 years. Thank you very much. I feel like I should sit down now. I am not going to tell you why I should be president. I don't need to tell you why I should be president, because you would gladly have anyone in this room ahead of Bill Clinton or Robert Dole. And if I started telling you why I should be president, it would sound pretty much like an echo, because I don't think there's that much difference between the people here on this platform on what we want to do to the federal government. But at the risk of sounding redundant, let me just say 3 little words. Government doesn't work. As Irwin said, anybody in America today would have to be brain dead not to know that, but they do need to be reminded of it. Everywhere people recognize that government doesn't work, they recognize that government reforms don't work, they recognize that government politicians don't work, but what is missing? Why is it that after 25 years, why is it after 30 years of a libertarian revolution in this country, and believe me, that's what we have had, why is it government continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger every year? Because we have not had a political focus. We have not had a place where Americans could vent their anger politically and say, this will make a difference. They have become so cynical of Republicans and Democrats. They have gotten to the point where they don't believe anybody. The only way that I have been able to convince anyone that I am different from anyone else is by telling them, look, just like Bill Clinton, just like Bob Dole, just like Pat Buchanan, just like Phil Gramm, I have qualified for federal matching campaign funds. But unlike Bill Clinton, Pat Buchanan, Bob Dole, and Phil Gramm, I do not believe in welfare. I do not... I do not believe in welfare for individuals. I do not believe in welfare for corporations. So you know bloody well I don't believe in welfare for politicians. We have to provide that focus. We have to provide that proposal. We have to be specific. We have to say this is what we are going to do, and that's why I laid it out in the book, Why Government Doesn't Work. That's why for the past 6 months I've been on 200 talk radio shows all over America, talking to about 20 million Americans with specific proposals to repeal the income tax, to get the federal government out of welfare, education, housing, transportation, regulation, agriculture, crime control, everything that it has stuck its nose into over the last 30 to 60 years that isn't authorized by the Constitution. Explaining to these people that there is a way of getting out of Social Security immediately and completely without leaving everybody holding the bag. Explaining why it is we have to end the insane war on drugs right now, not off in some distant future, not phase it out, not in any way compromise on this in any sort, but get rid of every drug law in America if we could overnight, so that we could do something positive about crime for a change, so that we could do something about drug abuse, because once we had no drug laws in this country, and at that time there were no drug problems. It all began in the 1960s with the insane war on drugs. And when the American people hear that, they understand it. In just 2 years, I have seen a difference of what has taken place in this country. 2 years ago, if I mentioned the war on drugs, there was hysteria on the radio from the host, from the people calling in. Now people sometimes disagree with me, but they respectfully disagree and they want to go on to the next issue. Nobody gets excited. Nobody says, oh, you're going to put heroin machines in the restrooms for children to use and all of this. Amen, brother.
Well, that one ended on an interesting note, didn't it? It may be necessary for the C-SPAN people to adjust the volume slightly. These mics came apart, well, in the last couple of speakers. All right, and our final speaker, again, on why should you be President of the United States, is Douglas Ohmen.
Ladies and gentlemen, citizens of the United States, we have an opportunity today to reverse the tide of history. We have seen America in disrespect throughout the world. We've seen lying and obfuscation throughout the government. We've seen the continual erosion of our basic freedoms, which are supposed to be protected by the Constitution. We've seen the escalation of the crime and the destruction of our schools. We've seen the withering of our economy. We've seen the continuing increase of taxes, fees, and regulations that strangle our people and our businesses, especially our small businesses. The list goes on and on. What could a libertarian president do to reverse some of this? First of all, unfortunately, a libertarian president cannot rule by decree, much as we'd like to. A libertarian president can only control directly the executive branch of the government. But there's a lot that can be done there. First of all, there can be a significant reduction in force in the federal government. IBM can do it, AT&T can do it, the Department of Defense has done it, the rest of the government can do it also, and this can happen right off. The president and all the rest of the government can start telling the truth, and the whole truth. Except in the case of national defense, but not lying for political defense. All of the government, departments of government can reread that Bill of Rights because they need to follow what they say, what's written, not as some distorted interpretation of it. Asset forfeiture to the federal government will cease immediately. There will be a major effort against criminals who do crime against others. We found out who blew up the 747 over Lockerbie, Scotland. We can find out who killed somebody in Washington, D.C. last night and punish them. Criminals in prison will come out, thank you. Criminals in prison will come out very chastened, and they will also come out with the skills and work habits to become productive members of society. Until Congress abolishes the Department of Education, which they should, we can hold the bureaucrats there personally responsible until they will actually have 12th graders able to read at the 12th grade level. Until Congress reduces and abolishes the onerous taxes that they have passed, the President and the Executive Department can reduce and abolish the millions of pettifogging little rules and regulations that stick to peoples and businesses. The IRS until we can abolish it, can and will treat taxpayers with the courtesy and respect that they're due. What about the budget? The president cannot cut the budget all by himself. But with a full court press, we at least could make sure that the budget never again goes up by a single penny. Even without significant number of departments being reduced, which we want to do, we would still balance the budget in about 3 years, not by 2002 or any other such malarkey as we're promised. Within the Libertarian Party, we must do a lot more to assist the local, the state, the city, and the county organizations. We must honor those who are able to get elected and to learn from them. They're the ones whose feet are actually on the road. We must make a major press to enroll more people in the Libertarian Party, especially young people. We have a long way to go, but I cannot believe that a party that actually believes in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights can't do it.
All right, we'll now proceed to the response speech, in which each candidate may respond to what another candidate or candidates has said. We will take them in the same order. The durations of these speeches will be no more than 3 minutes apiece. And so again, our first speaker will be Irwin Schiff.
A former Chief Justice, John Marshall, said the power to tax is the power to destroy. And no greater example of this is what's happened to this country. Before the Second World War, before the income tax, which was really imposed in 1943 by way of withholding taxes, America had the highest standard of living in the world. America exported all manner of goods all over the world. The dollar was regarded as the world's strongest currency. America was the biggest creditor nation. Now we're the biggest debtor nation. There are at least 9 countries with standards of living higher than our own. There are at least 9 countries with wage scales higher than our own. It's clear the federal government is destroying this country by extorting income taxes from the American public. And the reason why no American is required to pay income taxes, you can pay it voluntarily. If you want to volunteer, go do so. But I and millions of others Americans are no longer volunteering. And the reason why, if the income tax were compulsory, it would violate the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, and all 3 taxing clauses of the Constitution, as well as the 16th Amendment. Now, we have a country that's going crazy. The power to tax is the power to destroy. I believe if you cut the roots off, the tree dies. I'm not interested in tacking twigs. I'm tacking leaves. I want to prevent the government from extorting, and this is money from the American public, and this is the chief issue I think the Libertarian Party should bring to the American public, so that the IRS and the courts will no longer be able to intimidate the American public into paying a tax that no law requires anybody to pay. And I think once the American public knows that, you'll see the federal bureaucracy, the bureaucrats will simply wither. The federal government is like a huge hemorrhoid, and we have to excise that hemorrhoid. You know, it's amazing. It's amazing the press. The press sees all of these little issues, like unemployment, like youth, pregnancies of youth, homelessness, and they think all of these problems are separate. No. All of the problem stems from the government taking 50% of what the average American pays. When I was growing up in New Haven, Connecticut, women didn't work. They were home taking care of the kids. Now there is no American worker who can support his family just on his own paycheck. Because you know what? The average American worker in 1920 got twice as much money than the average American today. But I only got 3 minutes of my time. I'm supposed to comment on the other candidates. All I'm saying, I want to focus. Excuse me, John. I really want to focus on the criminal and destructive nature of the federal government, and I want to tell all Americans how they can immediately stop paying income taxes by claiming exempt on a W-4, and I can even show you how to get all the money back you were duped into paying this year by filing a 0 income tax return, refusing to assess yourself, and ask for it all back. I want to thank you very much.
I must confess my surprise. Of all our candidates, I did not expect that Irwin Schiff would be the first one to come in under the allotted time. Next up is Charles Collins.
We'll try to come under 3 minutes too, but we've got to say it fast and in a hurry. Our federal government is now utter insanity. Do you agree? Completely insane. In 2000, Generation X, the young people are told by Jim Pinkerton of the GAO, and he's been in the White House in 3 different administrations, your children will pay 84% of their paychecks for taxes unless we end this insanity. When I get there, I will pardon all the prisoners who are in jail because of the violation of some rule or regulation. We will go back to law and the Constitution and turn half of our prisoners out, and I will pardon them because they've done nothing but violate a rule. This is not right, and if you agree with that, let me hear it. Shall we turn them loose? I don't agree that we need to, I don't subscribe to selling off any of the assets of the United States of America. You do away with the Federal Reserve, you buy it back by the provisions, you end income taxes, that's $400 billion a year. You end the interest we're paying on our money in circulation, that's $400 billion. Those counteract each other. But we're spending close to $800 billion in the preparation of those taxes. And then the federal government is confiscating another $400 billion, the same cost of organized crime. $1.6 trillion that the government is taking. If we end that and we put this money in circulation, it will roll 10 times, either in savings or in spending, and we'll create a $16 trillion additional gross national product in 1 year. We will triple your salary in 1 year. President Collins will end the war on poverty and the war on drugs and all of these so-called wars and get you out from under the war powers and emergency powers. I will keep the President of the United States out of the drug business. There'll be no more Mina connections and no more Noriega connections. I promise you that. I, too, will abolish the Department of Education because I know outcome-based education is draining the morals of our children, and Goals 2000 is dumbing them down to be the slaves of the New World Order. I will get us out of the United Nations and end all of this plunge toward the New World Order. That will stop immediately. The president can cut the budget if he wants to. If you don't put the IRS into the budget, how long will they work? They'll quit. 3 minutes, and thank you so much.
All right, again, proceeding in the same order, the next speaker is Rick Thompkins.
Thank you. There's no way I can do this in 3 minutes. You know, talking about how many radio programs and radio stations we've been on is fine and how many people we've reached, and I will admit to you that my main opponent has done more of that this year than I have. But I'm going to say that if you don't have the right message, it doesn't help to shout it louder or more often. In my campaign, I have emphasized principles before politics. After all, we call ourselves the party of principle, and we shouldn't let ourselves get carried away with glitz and glamour and the possibility of getting extra votes and let ourselves stray from the straight and narrow of the principles on which this party is founded. People need to learn from whoever our candidate and whoever our spokesman is what it means to be a libertarian, what the principles are on which we base our positions on all these other issues. Until we get a consensus from people, an agreement on that simple, basic principle that it's wrong to initiate the use of force against people for any reason, We are wasting a lot of time talking about other issues. That's what makes a libertarian. You either accept that principle or you do not. Now, anyone can register as libertarian, and we want everybody to. Anyone can vote libertarian, and we'd like everyone to. But when they get up to speak, representing this party and what it stands for, I want those principles to be first and foremost. Years ago, in his famous speech, Martin Luther King spoke of his dream. He dreamed that people would be judged on the content of their character rather than the color of their skin. I think that was a very good dream, and I hope someday it comes true. But I have another dream. I have a libertarian dream. We dream of someday living in liberty, where government is not hurting people, and where those inalienable rights are honored and respected. And I have a vision for moving us toward that dream. Look, for people to want their freedom, they have to understand what it is, and they have to realize that they do not have it now. So I'm asking the American people, and that includes everyone in this room, to think about your country and what's happening to it, and your government and how many people it's hurting, and yourselves as individuals in simple terms of right and wrong.
All right, again, proceeding in the same order, next speaker is Harry Browne.
To continue where I left off, what is the one thing, the one event that might change the future of the Libertarian Party forever and put us in the mainstream and make us the third major party in America? What is that? Oh, gosh, it's great to be in a room with intelligent people. The debates, yes. How are we going to get in the debates? Well, we'll qualify on all grounds that are put in the Debate Commission's manual. We'll be on 50 states, on the ballot in 50 states. We will raise enough money to be well financed. We will do all of those things. But the one thing that will make the difference will be getting into the public opinion polls. And everything in our campaign now is directed at that end, to getting in the public opinion polls so that we can muscle our way into the debates in the fall. I make you no promises. I don't know whether we can do it. I think it's still a long shot, but it is definitely possible. The talk radio campaign has laid the groundwork. So far, there are about 24 talk radio hosts who have said they are endorsing me for president. They say, I don't know about you, but I'm voting for Harry Browne. They are telling their listeners and urging their listeners to vote for Harry Browne. In addition to that, though, there are probably 75 shows, at least, where the host has said, I have not made up my mind yet for whom I'm going to vote, but I certainly want to see Harry Browne in the debates in the fall. Now, in addition to that, of course, we're getting coverage on CNN. We're getting coverage on a lot of things. I'll be on the McNeil-Lehrer show next week. I'll be on Mary Matlin's Equal Time. I'll be on C-SPAN Sunday morning. We're getting coverage everywhere, but we're also getting coverage from friendly journalists who are writing nice things about us. And in the fall, in September, we will go back to all these people, and we will start a campaign to get Harry Browne in the debates, get Harry Browne in the debates, to urge their listeners, to urge their readers to write to the Debate Commission, write to the TV networks, write to the news magazines and say, you must include Harry Browne in the debates or it won't be a debate at all. Without Harry Browne in the debates, all they'll talk about is Bill Clinton's war record and Bob Dole's character. No, wait. No, it's Bill Clinton's character and Bob Dole's war record. I keep getting this mixed. I keep getting them mixed up all the way around. I want to say one thing only in response. Has anyone here ever heard me on the radio? Has anyone here ever heard me say anything that violates any libertarian principle? No! I thank you.
Our final response will be from Douglas Ohmen.
You've heard a lot of magical things that we're certainly going to do, and we'll guarantee that we'll get rid of the income tax and we'll eliminate all these departments and things like that. But unfortunately, there's a little problem there. Up there on the Hill, there's a whole bunch of Democrats and Republicans and one socialist. Or maybe a whole bunch of socialists. But there aren't any libertarians up there. And before we can do anything significant, we need to get 218 libertarians in that House, and we need to get 51 of them in the Senate. Politicians know that there's a trick to this, is that what you got to do is you got to tax everybody widely, and then you give it to narrow groups. That way the narrow group votes for you, and each narrow group says, man, he's our friend, but they don't ever notice how much is coming out of everybody. That's the way the game is played. We've got a hard fight to convince people that really the amount that they're taking away is way more than they're giving back. That's what we've got to convince people of. A veto by a president is just not going to work. Vetoes can be overridden quite easily, and when all the Democrats and Republicans up there, they'll just override it. So we need to have an awful lot of grassroots work to do here. I think part of what you've seen here is that this is a group of people that can do that. And one of the goals that we need to be is we need to be not the third party, we need to be the second party, and then go on to be the first. Part of that is that we have to work toward restoring to this country the honor and dignity and freedom that is our belief that we were born with and that we're supposed to be kept for us. Let's keep going in that direction.
All right, we're now going to proceed to the three previously prepared questions. And just a possible correction of what was stated earlier, each candidate will have 2 minutes apiece to answer these questions. We're also going to start flip-flopping the order in which the candidates appear. Question number 1 is, what issues will you emphasize in your campaign? And we are going to reverse the order, so Mr. Douglas Ohmen will now come back to the microphone.
What issues? I think the one issue that is above all is that we keep smelling the miasma, the stink that keeps coming out of Washington, D.C., and especially right down there in the White House. We've got to restore some honor, some honesty, some truthfulness. We've got to stop having the White House be the place where all the cronies come in and get their hands into the pockets of the American people. We've got to have the executive department start to protect the rights and freedom. What issues? I think the one issue that is above all is that we keep smelling the miasma, the stink that keeps coming out of Washington, D.C., and especially right down there in the White House, we've got to restore some honor, some honesty, some truthfulness. We've got to stop having the White House be the place where all the cronies come in and get their hands into the pockets of the American people. We've got to have the executive department start to protect the rights and freedoms of the people in the United States.
All right, that was considerably less than 2 minutes. A role model for us all. Again, proceeding in reverse order now, the next person to the microphone will be Harry Browne.
In an interview, in a press conference, anywhere, I'll be glad to answer questions on any subject, of course, but I think that we need to realize that politics is personal. We have to appeal to people in a way that will make a significant difference in their lives. People really aren't interested in a better world. They're not even interested in a better America that much, except for a few patriotic Americans like the ones in this room. But people are very, very concerned about their own lives, and we need to appeal to them where they live. And that's why I think the three most important issues in this campaign this year will be repealing the income tax entirely and replacing it with nothing. Getting the government completely out of Social Security so that our parents and grandparents are safe and so that we no longer are putting 15% of our incomes down a rat hole called Social Security. That's number two. Number three, to do something positive about crime by getting the federal government completely out of crime control, completely out of gun control, completely out of asset forfeiture, completely out of any kind of crime control, but more than anything else, the one thing in the world that will dramatically change the crime picture in this country is to end the insane war on drugs. And you know something? I don't think the Republicans are going to try to steal that issue from us. And you know something? I don't think the Democrats are going to try to steal any of them from us.
All right, again, proceeding in reverse order, the question is, what issues will you emphasize in your campaign? Rick Thompkins.
The first issue always is the fundamental issue I mentioned before. We have to have agreement that it's wrong to hurt people. It's wrong to initiate force against peaceful people. But my sub-issues that come under that are also very important and follow very, very cleanly. First of all, taxation is not theft, as we've said for so many years. A thief typically only strikes you once and doesn't try to convince you it was for your own good. Taxation, in fact, is a form of slavery. My next issue is that juries in this country should know, should be told, should be fully informed of the full range of their rights and responsibilities and duties and obligations, and that includes consulting their conscience to render justice regardless of what the law says and regardless of the instructions of the judge. I'm going to run out of time. I've got 5 issues. I won't get them all. We got to end this practice of victim disarmament. We must restore the right of people to defend themselves. Stop punishing people for defending themselves. and full educational choice for everyone without government control, and end prohibition again.
I'm starting to feel like I should be dressed in a hooded black robe and carrying a scythe. Okay, continuing to proceed, reverse order. What issues will you emphasize in your campaign? Charles Collins.
Thank you so much for your kind attention. The things we will emphasize would be to unite America and go back to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and become one nation under God again. In the Federal Reserve System in the United States of America, stop the interest on our money in circulation, end the income tax completely. All of this is possible within the law that we already have, and end the IRS and address the debt and get rid of it. Don't renege and don't default. I would end the BATF and all the police power that they have intruding into your homes and your cars. What to me, probable cause means a cause to go get a warrant, not to stop you and search your car and seize everything and to take it away from you. This has become one of the largest detriments to the American people. $400 billion a year stolen from you, and you have no right to recourse, and you can't get your money back. That must end. We'll protect Americans and fire Janet Reno, and we will have the fourth department of government. Just like the gentleman says, let's let the jury of 12 people know that they are the fourth branch of our government, and they can turn over any law or any ruling of the first three articles, the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. The jury and the fully informed jury, we must return to its rightful place. And when we go back under the Constitution, it'll be under common law, where we go back to the Magna Carta. Thank you so much.
Final candidate to answer the first question is Irwin Schiff.
Well, what issue would I stress? I really haven't considered it. Let me think a moment. What I would stress is, number one, the fact that I invite all Americans to join with me in not paying income taxes. You have a patriotic duty not to support the shysters, the spendthrifts, the drunken sailors in Washington who are simply dissipating our wealth. But the second thing I want to emphasize is the corruption and the criminality that exists on the federal bench. Many of you have heard, and lawyers like to say, I'm sure you've heard this, that the Supreme Court interprets the Constitution. And I always say, why? Is it written in Chinese? It doesn't have to be interpreted. Incidentally, if it had to be interpreted, then the Constitution would be void for vagueness. If the Constitution was what men in bat suits say it is, then we'd be a nation of men and not a nation of law. No, the Constitution means what it says, and I don't have to have a bunch of lawyers who've been elevated to the federal bench. Many people don't know this, but before any lawyer gets appointed to the federal bench, he must take a test on the Constitution, and only those who fail are allowed. You know, I would emphasize that the Constitution says the government can regulate interstate commerce. When the Founding Fathers, I'm sorry, thank you very much.
All right, before I go on to the second question, let me mention something about the written questions from the audience. We probably aren't going to be able to handle very many of them. We're going to give the candidates 1 minute apiece to answer them, and if you want the slightest probability of your question being addressed, you will keep it short and germane. All right, for the second question, we're going to flip-flop again back to our original order, and question number 2 is, how will you bring your message to the American electorate? So speaking first on the second question is Irwin Schiff.
Well, I purchased a bunch of postal cards. Well, you know, I've done over 1,000 talk shows myself in the last 10 years. I have a book that's currently selling called The Federal Mafia, How It Illegally Imposes and Unlawfully Collects Income Taxes. We've sold over 400,000 books over the last 10 years, which is not too bad for a self-published author. And, you know, I have 2 radio talk shows in Las Vegas, and every Thursday I make it a habit. I call the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I say, I tell them they're live on KLAV, and I offer them $5,000 if they'll identify any law that says you got to pay income tax, and they hang up on me. I call them back. I do this every Thursday, so at least the people... I will communicate the way I have been communicating over the years. Hopefully, if I got the nomination, to make it a little easier. Of course, people keep saying, you know, he went to jail. Well, so did Gandhi, so did Solzhenitsyn. I went to jail because Peter Dorsey, who's now the chief judge in Connecticut, actually told my jury they could convict me of tax evasion, even if the government didn't prove the act of evasion I was charged with committing. And 3 other criminals on the Second Circuit Court of Appeal affirmed that jury instruction. And my conviction was written up in the Journal of Taxation, and even they said I was never convicted of tax evasion because I was never convicted of committing any act of tax evasion. So I would just keep doing what I have been doing. Hopefully, getting the nomination would make it that much easier, and I want to thank you very much for all your kind attention.
Twice in one day. All right, again, proceeding with the second previously prepared question, how will you bring your message to the American electorate? Charles Collins.
Thank you so much. First of all, I was the first nominated candidate by a convention this year in Wichita, the CURE Convention, Constitutionally Unified Republic for Everyone. I would bring this staff of people in 38 states, which has expanded to 50 states, and bring it behind the candidacy of Charles Collins as the Libertarian candidate. This is a tremendous database, and we would use these folks because they are dedicated to liberty and freedom, justice, equality, hope, opportunity, and responsibility. Those 7 things are the keynotes. We will get radio ads out, also radio talk shows, which we are on sometimes 3 to 6 hours a day. We would have our state chairman working in every county, in every precinct. We would bring this to the Libertarian Party. We would also have national newspaper ads, which we know how to do, and we know how to get remnant ads at a reasonable price. We would work person to person, and we would have caravans all over the United States with our banners and carrying the message that we do want liberty, freedom, equality, and justice. When we return to the Constitution, do you realize that we Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3, we will not have a truly legal judge in the United States of America. Think about that and vote for Collins for president. Thank you.
I hate to tell you this, but your glasses fell in between the podium and the thing about it. All right. Okay, again, continuing with the second question, how will you bring your message to the American electorate, is Rick Thompkins.
Well, assuming that all of us have mentioned all the ways through TV shows and radio shows, et cetera, I can say all of the above. I have an idea, though, for something else that might be a little bit unique, and I'd be willing to try it. First of all, I want to ask this question, though. If I am the nominee, if I am the person that you select to run this campaign, would you be willing to help out? Somehow I thought so. Maybe we'll take a page, in addition to all the other routine ways and doing everything we can to get into the national debates, et cetera, maybe we should take a page from the history books from a gentleman by the name of Gandhi. I would be willing to start a trek from the West Coast to the East Coast, stopping off, of course, to get on the phone and get on TV and radio, et cetera, and walk a peace and liberty march all the way to this silly place for Election Day. Maybe that's a crazy idea, but it just might get us some attention.
All right, our next respondent is Harry Browne.
First of all, we have to realize that there's no magic bullet. There is nothing that's going to, just like that, get our message to the American people. It takes hard work, it takes money, it takes dedication, and it isn't going to happen in 4 months. It's something that takes a long time. We started 2 years ago, in August of 1994, to build this campaign. I'm happy to say that of the $800,000 we've raised, over half of it has come from outside the party, from new donors who have come into the Libertarian Party as a result of this campaign. It requires a lot of work to build relationships with talk show hosts. It requires a lot of work, a lot of press releases, a lot of other things. It requires a lot of advertising, which is going to take more money. We're going to start Monday morning running ads on the radio at drive time here in Washington, D.C. Now, why in the world would we run ads in Washington, D.C.? The only state I have written off in this campaign is Washington, D.C. Because we're running them at drive time for the journalists on their way to work and on their way home. The national journalists, we want them to know we are serious, that we are here, that we are running a first-class campaign. Then we're going to branch out as the money comes in and start running ads on the talk radio shows that I've been on over the last 6 months. We're going to appeal, first of all, to those that should be on our side, the libertarians out there who have not joined the party, who have not joined the campaign, and we are going to reach those people. If we want to get 15 to 20% of the vote this year, and I don't know whether we can, but if we want to get that much, we're going to have to get that mostly from the people who should be on our side, but have yet not joined because they think they're wasting their vote. Of course, the only way you waste your vote is voting for somebody whose principles are the opposite of yours. But that's where we will start. That's where we will continue from there. There's a lot more, and we'll talk about it as we proceed.
All right, our final respondent on this question is Douglas Ohmen, and he's right here.
The Libertarian Party has got over 1,000 people that are running for office this year. My proposal is that I want to see as many of those people and to stand on a platform as many of them as I possibly can, because those people are us. They are libertarians. They're trying to get this message across. I can help them. They could help me. It's a mutual thing. Both of us have to work toward the same end, getting elected in city councils, getting elected on the county council, getting elected in Congress, in the state legislature, and in the White House. I think we all need to work together. Thank you.
All right, for the third previously prepared question, we're going to flip the order around again. And that question is, how will your campaign help the Libertarian Party? Douglas Ohmen.
I didn't know that question before I answered the last one, but I think that we do have to make sure that the people that are at the head of the campaign here are also the people that are taking care and helping the people in the local campaigns. You can't just do one thing. You can't just say, look at me, I'm on nationwide TV, and ignore all of the people that are doing the grassroots work throughout the United States, because people everywhere are going in this direction, and that's all of us. We've got a long ways to go. We've got a lot to do. We've got a lot of people to get elevated. We've got to bring more people in. We've got to get them educated. We've got to get them to donate. Money is the mother's milk of politics. I'm afraid it's true. But we can do it because all of us are working toward restoring this country to being the kind of place we want it to be for ourselves and for our children.
Second respondent to the question, how will your campaign help the Libertarian Party, is Harry Browne.
Well, part of it is just the audition that we've all gone through over the last year or two of how it has helped the party so far. I think that my campaign already has brought in several thousand new people, new donors, new people to the party itself. But let's look ahead over what's going to happen as a result of this election campaign. We have a chance to win this. It is a long shot. I assure you, it is a very, very long shot. But if the right things were to happen and we were to take advantage of them, we might win. We don't expect to, but we should try to win. But what if we don't win, we get, say, 15 to 20% of the vote? Then we have the balance of power in America for good. No longer could the politicians say, well, you have no place else to go. They would know that people could go to the Libertarian Party. But you might say even that's setting our sights awfully high. Suppose we only get 5% of the vote. Suppose all we do is to break out of the 1% class finally once and for all. Would that accomplish anything for the Libertarian Party? You bet it would. It would accomplish three things, and all of them would have to do with one insurmountable hurdle that has plagued us up to now, and that is the hurdle of irrelevancy. I love your message. I think it's wonderful. I'm with you people all the way, but you don't have a chance to win. Therefore, I'm supporting Mr. X, the Republican, or Mr. Y, the Democrat, because I don't want to waste my vote, I don't want to waste my money, I don't want to waste my time. We get out of the 1% class, and we are going to bring thousands and thousands and thousands, I should say tens of thousands of new people into the Libertarian Party, and that's going to give us the logistical support to get out the vote, to poll watch, to do all the things that are necessary to run a first-class campaign in the year 2000, and perhaps elect a Libertarian president then. Running out of time. The second thing is we will have hundreds of thousands of new registrants to the Libertarian Party switching from Republican, Democrat, and Independent all over the country. And the third thing is that we will open up the doors to fundraising all over the country from those people who can write the $20,000 checks to the party but haven't done so up to now, because why contribute to a party that doesn't have a chance to win? We break out of 1% and they know we have a chance to win any race, and we're in it for good then.
Before we go on, I want to mention that Don and I have been looking at the questions. It appears that we will have time to answer 5 questions from the audience. We have selected those questions. Our next respondent to this question is Rick Thompkins.
I just got an emergency message from Kathy, my wife, who she wanted me, by the way, to say hello to everyone. She's so sorry she couldn't be here. But she was watching C-SPAN and heard my announcement about that march. I'm in deep trouble. She says I've been gone enough. All right. Of course, by showing people good reasons, not only to vote Libertarian, not only to join the Libertarian Party and support it and contribute to it, but to actually become Libertarians and work with us in our quest to restore freedom in this country.
I may, however, insist that each candidate take at least 1 minute. All right, next respondent to the third prepared question, how will your campaign help the Libertarian Party, is Charles Collins.
Thank you so much. We're going across this country, we're talking on talk shows, and we're preaching the libertarian theme every day. This is the best thing that can happen to the libertarians because we will restore the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. We will end inheritance and estate taxes. We will end property taxes and go back to allodial ownership of land. This has to be a #1 issue in this campaign because a lot of people don't know what we're talking about, and I know you do. But we have to offer to the cities and the counties the opportunity to borrow money interest-free from the Treasury and not have to levy property taxes against your land and your home and your farms. Do this, you return to allodial ownership of land. We would tell everybody, vote your conscience. Don't ever vote for Dole or Clinton. Neither one, because you get the same. And as our keynote speaker said yesterday, there's not a dime's worth of difference between Bob Clinton and Bill Dole. I thought that was one of the most outstanding keynote speeches I had ever heard. And I would continue to preach the importance of truth, honesty, integrity, and character in government and return to that Constitution, because if we go back to that, all of the 27,000 splinter groups, as I call the smaller parties, those who have a special agenda, those who have special interests, there are 27,000 in this country. Let's unite behind liberty and freedom and the libertarian movement. Thank you.
Once again, a candidate avoids the dreaded touch on the shoulder. All right, our next respondent to our final prepared question is Irwin Schiff.
Well, the thing is, how would my candidate help promote a more libertarian environment in this country? The reason for the party is to get a more libertarian environment, not to necessarily strengthen the party, because we're not interested in patronage. The Republicans and Democrats are involved in politics because of the patronage and the money they make through politics. The fact of the matter is, in the past 20 or 25 years, we've run libertarian candidates who've been very articulate, Andre Maru and certainly Ron Paul. But we have a more libertarian environment now than we started 25 years ago. I submit we have a more authoritarian, a more dictatorial, as evidenced by the fact that we have civil seizures and forfeitures. Now, the only way we're going to get a more libertarian environment is reduce the power and the influence of the federal government, and the only way we can do that is cut off its source of funds. The American public believes in obeying the law. Unfortunately, millions of Americans really think there's a law requiring them to pay income taxes when there is no such law. And when millions of Americans know there is no law requiring them to pay income taxes, millions of Americans will join the 10 and 15 million Americans who today are now no longer filing and paying income taxes. I don't pay income taxes, and millions of my friends, well, not millions. The IRS admits, as a matter of fact, that voluntary compliance is only 82% effective. If the Libertarian Party would adopt my platform and explain to the American public why filing is totally voluntary, I believe the Libertarian Party can bring compliance down to under 75%, and at under 75% it will collapse. It's going to collapse eventually, and don't be the last one on your block to stop paying income taxes.
Okay, we now proceed We now proceed to 5 questions submitted by members of the audience, and I already have them up here. Let me see. Well, unfortunately, only 2 of them are signed, so I can't attribute the other 3, so I won't attribute any of them. All right. The first question, to which, and again, on these questions, the candidates will have 1 minute apiece to respond. The first question is, when did you join the Libertarian Party? And we'll just flip-flop on these, so we'll start again with Irwin Schiff.
Well, I was a libertarian before there was a Libertarian Party. My first book, The Biggest Con, How the Government is Fleecing You, which came out in 1976, I actually put in the back of the book, I recommended that they get in touch with Foundation for Economic Education, which was the only place that they could go to get information on the Libertarian Party. And I belonged, I don't know, a number of years ago to the Connecticut Libertarian Party. I was never too active because I believe that libertarians did a lot of talking, but they weren't as active as I would like to have been. And then, of course, I got involved in the tax resistance movement. And then, of course, my participation was interrupted because I spent a few years, you know, in the in the bar hotel, the Gray Bar Hotel. And then, of course, I rejoined recently when I decided to run and seek the Libertarian nomination for president. But if you check my book, The Biggest Con, How the Government is Fleecing You, you'll see it's loaded with libertarian concepts and ideas.
All right, next respondent to the question, when did you join the Libertarian Party, is Charles Collins.
I started supporting Libertarian candidates 2 years ago when I started out on talk show radio and found out that everybody said you're a Libertarian and you need to go on and get in the party. And I ran across a lot of people running who wanted constitutional government and Bill of Rights and back to that Constitution and dedication to the Declaration of Independence. I ended up as an independent. I'd been a Republican a long time. But I ended up an independent because I saw that the sellout was there. It was there when I went out to Wichita, and I knew that we could not survive in the Republican Party. The big tent was just a little bitty teepee. It was not big enough. So I joined the Libertarian Party in June, and I came here at the insistence of friends across the country to speak. I met Harry Browne and his wife on several occasions, and I came to echo what he has said and to try to add to the libertarian thrust that's going right now. Thank you.
Next respondent to the question, when did you join the Libertarian Party, is Rick Thompkins.
I want to welcome all the relative newcomers up here. It really doesn't matter how long you say you've been a libertarian. The question was, when did you join the Libertarian Party? I mean, we could all say that we were born libertarians. We had it kind of brainwashed out of us maybe for a while, but then we finally made it back. I first heard of the Libertarian Party in 1980, heard of its existence. 3 minutes later, I registered to vote. I had never been a registered voter before that. And 8 years ago, in 1988, almost 8.5 years now, I became active in the Libertarian Party, and it virtually took over my life. I've been almost a full-time activist for the past 8 years in many capacities.
Next respondent is Harry Browne.
I began writing and speaking on libertarian ideas in the early 1960s, but I became totally inactive politically after reading a book called How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World. And as a result of that, I dropped out of politics completely. 4 years ago, my wife suggested that I run for president. Actually, she didn't say that. She said, "Why don't you be president?" And then we had to figure out how to get from here to there. I thought about it for 2 years, we talked about it, and when I made the decision that I was going to run for president, there was no question, of course, about which party would have to be the party for whose support I would ask, and that would be the Libertarian Party. It isn't that the Libertarian Party is the best party for the purpose, it is the only party that stands for liberty and individualism.
Final respondent to the question is Douglas Ohmen.
Thank you. Rick makes us all into newcomers. There's no question about that. I am also one of those newcomers. I've been in the party about 3 years now. I'm one of those people who started out as a Republican. We've been traveling that way. My dad was a Democrat, but I found that the Republicans couldn't do the thing either, that we had to do more for freedom. So I've been a libertarian about 3 years. Got to ask the question is, how did I find out about it? And that comes back to all of us, is that someone came up and said, "Why don't you join?" We all need to be out there saying to a lot of other people, "Why don't you join?"
Okay, don't get too comfortable, Doug. Like I say, we're just going to reverse the order on every question, and the second of 5 questions from the audience is, will you take a pledge not to take matching funds? Doug Ohmen.
Sure, I'd be glad to take that pledge. Since at this time, it's real easy to take a pledge on something that you can't possibly do. But I think Harry's the only one of us that could come close to taking the pledge and it meaning something. But the key thing, though, one of the things we do have to think about is one of the reasons that Harry may not get in the debates, if he is their candidate, is that he does not take matching funds. So we need to think about that really carefully.
By a curious coincidence, the next respondent is Harry Browne.
Well, you know my answer to that already, and as far as the debates are concerned, I and my campaign staff discussed this at great length and have over a long period of time. What are we going to do about that? I do not believe this will keep us out of the debates. If we're not in the debates, it's because I'm not showing up in the polls in September when they make the decision. If I'm at 10% in the polls, I don't think they can keep us out and still hold the debates because they would be too embarrassed to do so. If I'm at 1%, I don't think I should be in the debates. You can't have 25 candidates in the debates. You can't have everybody who decides to run for president in it. To repeat myself, if I'm at 1% or less, you cannot be in the debates because you can't have 25 candidates in the debate. It is important that we build name recognition for the candidate and the party over the next few months. It is important that we take advantage of every opportunity, write letters to editors, call into talk shows, vote in the internet polls. You probably know that I'm winning 3 of the internet polls, including CNN Time poll. I'm in second place in 3 of the others. Take advantage of all of these things. This is the way we will get into the debates.
Okay. All right, third respondent to the question, will you take a pledge not to take matching funds, is Rick Thompkins.
I don't even know why this is a question for any of us. I don't care how much easier it might make it for us in some ways. I don't care how much benefit we might get out of it. The price for which you sell out is irrelevant. I will not take matching funds for any reason, period.
Fourth respondent is Charles Collins.
Thank you. That's an easy question to answer. I would not take matching funds, but back early in the campaign, I had an offer from some powers to be who had been a big influence in a previous presidential election to not be outspent in the campaign, in the primary or in the general election, $50 million each time. And I said, no, this compromises my integrity because I could not speak out about the things that I wanted to speak out about. We need to have FEC reform, and this is the first thing I would do when elected president, and I would not take those matching funds, but we would have some reform when I got to Washington. Thank you.
Final respondent to the question is Irwin Schiff.
Well, I have no problem about taking such an oath, but Doug, I don't know why you're reluctant about taking a meaningless oath. Federal judges and U.S. attorneys do it all the time.
Okay, we move to the third question from the audience. Very short and simple. How do you define libertarianism? Again, reversing the order, Irwin Schiff.
Well, what is a libertarian, of course, was enshrined in the Declaration of Independence. It says we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And to secure these rights, governments are instituted. I don't know about European government, but our government was not instituted to tell me how to save for my old age and what to eat or what not to eat. The United States government was instituted to protect my right to pursue my happiness as I see fit. And I may do things or live my life in a way that other people might not do it, but as long as I don't interfere with them pursuing their happiness as they see to it, the federal government has no authority under the Constitution to interfere.
Next respondent to the question, how do you define libertarianism, is Charles Collins.
My answer to that is freedom, equality, liberty, justice, opportunity, hope, and responsibility. This is what we have to live for in our country. And as Irwin says, the Declaration of Independence defines what a libertarian is. I have been campaigning across this country, and I've been talking about the things that give the people liberty and freedom. And we know that the administration is attacking our freedoms every day. We're losing our freedom every day. We've lost the Fourth Amendment by their kicking down doors. This is not libertarian. This is not American. This is Gestapo. This is KGB. My definition of libertarian across the country, thank you very much, that's a tap on the shoulder. But remember, freedom and equality, justice, and liberty. Thank you.
Next respondent to how do you define libertarianism is Rick Thompkins.
You leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. Irwin's reference to the Declaration is very apropos. Basically, I define libertarianism in a very simple way. It is the acceptance of the idea that it is always wrong to initiate force against other people with the sole exception of self-defense.
The next respondent is Harry Browne.
Of course, we all get asked that question often. I answer it by saying that libertarians believe in individual liberty, personal responsibility, and freedom from government on all issues at all times. There has been some talk about some kind of conflict between principle and politics. Now repeat after me. There is no conflict between principle and politics. Our principles are the most popular political ideas in America today. We are the only party upholding them. The other parties are on the defensive, and we have nothing to be defensive about. We have nothing to compromise. We have nothing to milk down. We have nothing to worry about. All we have to do is tell people what we believe, show them how we can get from here to a smaller government, present credible proposals, and by God, they're going to want everything that we have to offer.
Final respondent on this question, how do you define libertarianism, is Douglas Ohmen.
How many ways can you say freedom? This is freedom for the individual, freedom for the person, freedom from government, freedom from somebody else telling us what we have to do, freedom from the bully on the schoolyard. But it's personal freedom. Of course, with personal freedom is personal responsibility. But that's not for somebody else to diagnose for you. It's your own freedom to do what you need to do within the realm of those freedoms that God gave us as acknowledged in the Declaration of Independence.
We proceed to the fourth question from the audience, and we flip the order again. And the fourth question is, if you don't receive the Libertarian Party nomination, will you endorse and campaign for the nominee? Again, reversing the order, so Douglas Ohmen.
When I look at the other four people up here on the stage with me, I can say unequivocally, yes, whoever gets it, I would be delighted to. Let me add also, before I get the tap on the shoulder, that I am also going to do an awful lot to campaign for the people in my own district and the districts around me, that to get them into office also this year. And I hope that all of us will be doing the same there. Thank you.
Second respondent to this question is Harry Browne.
It would be very easy for me to say, of course, I will support whoever the nominee is, but one of my principles is honesty. And I must tell you in all honesty that I have not read the campaign platforms of the other candidates, and I have not heard, other than Irwin Schiff, a campaign platform in any of the debates I've been in around the country. And I would have to read those platforms first before I would say that I would support somebody unequivocally. But I can tell you this, that I am unconditionally committed. Thank you, sir. Well, that's one vote for honesty. I will tell you this, I am unconditionally, my wife and I both are unconditionally committed to the future of the Libertarian Party. Yeah. And when this campaign is over, whoever runs it and however it comes out, we are starting on the day after Election Day to build the party for 1998 elections to get libertarians in Congress, and for 2000 so that we elect a libertarian president as the United States.
next respondent is Rick Thompkins.
You want truth, huh? Well, I have read at least one other platform, Mr. Browne's. I've also read his book. On the strength of those alone, I might have had to qualify my answer because I have some problems, I have some difficulties with some issues brought forth there. However, on the strength of what Harry just said to you, and assuming that he's telling the truth, I have no reason to doubt him. The answer is yes.
The next respondent to the question, if you don't receive the Libertarian Party nomination, will you endorse and campaign for the nominee, is Charles Collins.
Ladies and gentlemen, when I came, I was invited to bring a platform which I brought and distributed to everybody. I was told that when you did endorse the campaign, that you endorsed the platform which I have not seen. And I would work very hard. What I want to do is don't give this election back to Dole or Clinton. And wherever I find that if I don't have access to the running for the presidency of the United States, I will support the best candidate and the one who is constitutional. And the ones that I have seen across the country, there are only one or two, and there are not very many of those are really constitutional or care about your Bill of Rights. They don't care about your Declaration of Independence. If I'm not nominated, when I read the platform of all the candidates and whoever is nominated, then I will make that decision. But at this time, I will reserve it because I was told to do so when I got here. But I can support Harry Browne without any problem because I love Harry and I love his platform. But the whole Libertarian Party I love also.
I can't resist. I love you, man. The next respondent. The next respondent is Irwin Schiff.
Well, certainly I will have absolutely no problem supporting anyone that this convention nominates, but I must say I will not be able to vote for anyone. As a convicted felon, allegedly, remember I was convicted of violating a law that doesn't exist on the basis of a jury instruction by Peter Dorsey. Are you listening, Peter? Anyway, but I'll be happy to support anyone that the convention nominates. But I'm sorry, folks, you can't get my vote.
All right, the fifth and final question from the audience, and we will be closing our debate this afternoon with this. Again, the 1-minute rule holds. And this is sort of a question, too, for the delegates and for the C-SPAN audience to pay special attention to, is why should a member of one of the old political parties vote Libertarian? Libertarian. The first respondent is Irwin Schiff.
Well, if you want to vote for Tweedledum or Tweedledee, I mean, both Dole and Clinton are lawyers. They're lawyers, they're politicians. They both erected the welfare state. You know, I love when politicians call themselves public servants. as if they're in politics to serve the public. They're in politics to serve themselves. They're in politics because they make more money being in politics. They like the perks, and they need the job. Frankly, none of us need the job. We're just running because we think we can improve the libertarian climate in this country. What was the question? All right.
This won't count against your minute. All right, you finished? All right. To remove any possible confusion, the question is, why should a member of one of the old political parties vote Libertarian? And the next respondent is Charles Collins.
My answer to that is that anybody in this auditorium, anybody in the United States would be a better recipient of your vote than Bill Clinton or Bob Dole. Thank you. And after I read all of the platforms and go through, I have a little problems. I've been spending a lot of time reading to make sure where my ideology and that of the Libertarian Party goes right down the road together and where we come close and where we part. But in looking at the Declaration of Independence, we do know that all men and women are created equal and they are endowed with those rights. Government didn't give us those rights, and if we restrict those rights on any individual, we restrict them on ourselves. So I am a real searching person trying to find liberty and equality and freedom and justice. I will vote that way. Thank you.
Our next respondent is Rick Thompkins.
Well, they should, because it's the right thing to do. The question is, would they? Well, maybe they would if they have an attack of honor. We have to recognize there's a lot of people out there that really aren't interested in freedom because they're afraid of it, or because they like the idea that they can get other people to take care of them, that they can live without personal effort. They don't mind stealing from their neighbors. We still got people out there who are like that, and they're never going to vote for us. But for people who honor freedom and who want the peace and the tolerance and the prosperity and are willing to accept the responsibilities of being a free people and all that that implies, that's why they should vote for us.
Our next respondent is Harry Browne.
Over the past 2 years, I have met so many people whom I could only describe as poor libertarians trapped in a conservative body or trapped in a liberal body. These people, when they hear the message, they say, I thought I was a conservative, or I thought I was a liberal, or I thought I was a Democrat, or I thought I was a Republican, and I guess I'm really a libertarian. What we have to do is carry the message of these people, and we have to ask them, would you be willing to give up your favorite federal programs if it meant you never had to pay income tax again? Because you elect me and the Libertarian Party president, and I swear to you, I will not rest until every dollar you make is yours to spend, to save, to give away as you see fit. Vote Libertarian.
have to do that for Doug. Douglas Ohmen.
Thank you. Why should a Democrat or a Republican vote for a Libertarian candidate? Have you noticed, to the people out there on C-SPAN, have you noticed that your rights and your freedoms have been whittled away every day, little bit by little bit? Have you noticed that your taxes are going up every day, little bit, sometimes a lot? Have you noticed that there are more regulations on the size of toilet seats and the size of the door jamb and this, that, and the other thing? Your business has to spend more and more hours every year on preparing taxes and all the rest, more regulations. This is the only party, this is the only place, and these are the only people who will reverse that trend and bring this country back to the place that we all envision that it should be, a land of freedom, a land of opportunity. Thank you.
This does conclude the debate. I wish to personally thank all of you and all of the candidates for calming many of the apprehensions I had about this event. Here is Don Ernstberger.
I would like to thank all 5 of our candidates who participated. I'd like to thank Jay Manifold, and I want to thank all of you. And I'd like to thank all of you for attending. As delegates, you have 16 hours to make your choice about who will carry our banner in the election. And as American voters, you have 4 months to turn America back on the road to freedom by voting Libertarian. An announcement by John Famularo, National Secretary.
I just wanted to make an announcement. I wanted to make an announcement to all of the presidential campaigns and to the delegates out there. As you know, there's a rule that was passed yesterday about the presidential access to nominations. So anyone who is planning on submitting the forms, the presidential first ballot pledges, they all have to be submitted before 7 p.m. tonight to me. So I will be here at this podium from 6:45 to 7 for any turn-ins of the presidential first ballot pledges.
Do we need to turn those in for none of the above?
No, you don't.
Thank you.
And one last announcement. At 8 o'clock tonight, we will have the 25th anniversary party for the Libertarian Party. It'll be in Columbia A and B, and we've got some more surprises ready for you. 8 o'clock, Columbia A, B.
C-SPAN's live coverage of the Libertarian Party convention continues tomorrow. Starting at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, see presidential and vice presidential nominations, followed by the delegate vote and the acceptance speeches. The Libertarian Convention, live from Washington, D.C., here on C-SPAN, the political network of record. And tonight, a look at the role of technology in Campaign 96. Democrats and